Oos, can you please hit my music? 4 letters, 1 word, suck. Because that is what Raw does every single week, okay? This episode of Raw, I have to admit, was not garbage per se. It was not the worst episode of Raw I've ever seen. But at the end of the day, you can only go up from the very bottom. I mean, Raw's been a consistent 1 or 2 out of 10 for the last 8 weeks. Tonight's episode was not horrible, but it was pretty bad. Now, I'm going to start breaking out some things that actually, the more I talk about it, it's probably going to get even worse. But as of now, I would say this episode was just laughably awful. Like, the stuff that was happening was so nonsensical and stupid and garbage that you just sit back and laugh at it. And I'm okay with laughing at a bad product. You understand what I'm saying? I'd rather laugh at a bad product than just be completely annoyed and upset with it. So this episode of Raw was obviously bad, but we're going to break it down. We're going to talk about everything that took place. And at the end of the day, we have to break down a couple things just off the get-go. Number one, if you're going to do a bunch of wrestling matches on a show, they need to be fairly great, and you also need to have some type of story being told throughout the entire night. You know what I'm saying? The hook and the thread that, ties the whole night together. Did this show have that? Not really. It was pretty inconsistent. The Seth Rollins Braun Breaker faction with Heyman is an absolute disaster, and everyone knows it. We can pretty much move on from this now. This is embarrassing at this point. We're going to talk about that in a second, okay? And obviously, the botches all night were just embarrassing. Kairi Sane botched the little dropkick with Rhea Ripley. I don't want to hear anyone talk about that being planned. It probably wasn't, but even if it was, it didn't look that good. Jay and Braun Breaker had a couple botches in their match. Zoe Stark, unfortunately, I don't know what took place, if that was a botch by her part or Kairi Sane missed the timing or something, or maybe Zoe Stark mistimed it and tried to break her fall, it seems like, by using her knee from a really wide distance across the ring, and she unfortunately looks like she tore her ACL or at least hurt her knee very badly, unfortunately. So hopefully she has a speedy and successful recovery. But, not Nia Jax, Natalya, Roxanne Perez, Grayson Waller with those little stupid kicks he was doing, bunch of botches with that, and they're dedicating 5 to 10 minutes to Tyrese Halliburton announcing that he's in a WWE 2K game. You understand? Like, what? Why are we doing this? You get what I mean? It doesn't make any sense, You have the Fortnite dances, the yeeting, all this stuff. It's just stupid, man. The brain rot is real, bro. And there's so many issues at this point. Just make a draft. Just make a draft and send half the Raw roster to LFG. Yeah. Send them to NXT or LFG at this point. The ring is a billboard. You have 50 million ads on the ring mat. The fans are bots, the usual stuff. And obviously you have no star power. And the Seth Rollins, quote unquote, the long gamer, like he's Triple H. Triple H calls himself the long gamer. The long gamer, I'm the gamer. Fina, I'm a Fina. Like, no, bro. This whole long gaming arc for Seth Rollins is embarrassing. Seth Rollins is making a long-term plan and storyline to scheme for a B-level title. The World Heavyweight Championship is the second most prestigious, and he's making a scheme for it. What? What even is this? Why would Braun Breaker be going along with this when he was just the Intercontinental Champion? Go from being the IC Champion to the World Champion. Why are you sitting back and helping somebody else win a belt that you can go achieve yourself? You've beaten Jey Uso before. You've beaten Sami Zayn before, but you're sitting in subservience to Seth Rollins, to help him get a belt. It's all just dumb, and it makes Seth Rollins look like a loser. You know what I'm saying? They want this to be like the new quasi, long-term storytelling like the Bloodline did. Was Roman Reigns ever going around backstage and telling people, hey, man, when you win that belt, your boy Seth Rollins, a visionary, the revolutionary, I'm going to go challenge you in a couple weeks, Gunther. I'm going to challenge you, Logan Paul. It makes Seth look like a jobber. Why would someone of Seth Rollins' caliber be scheming to win a B-level championship? You know what I'm saying? It makes no sense. And for us to get another meaningless match at the end of a Raw leading to a brawl segment with Punk, Sammy, and Rollins and Jay is just embarrassing at this point. If your goal is to make an example out of Jay and destroy him and weaken him up, then why are you even doing a match? Just beat up Jay backstage. The matches make no sense for this faction because their goals are completely opposite of that, but that's not the point. Let's break down this show. Sorry, that was a long intro, you know what I'm saying? But, let's just get into this. First off, we had a promo with Logan Paul and Gunther. This was semi-entertaining on Logan Paul's part, of course, not Gunther's, of course, but I mean, it is what it is. Logan Paul basically comes out there, and he does, we talk about like the one word, 4 letters, 1 word, all that stuff with yeet, yeet. Logan Paul basically does that, but with fact, So he basically says, I won a singles title in a way quicker time span than Jey Uso did. Fact. I am better than him. Fact. I've knocked him out 3 times. fact. I thought that was a pretty good play on words. He was working the crowd well, doing a pretty solid heel promo, okay? It was pretty entertaining. Multiple moments where I actually had a smile on my face. I was laughing at this. Logan Paul's very entertaining. Logan Paul's actually pretty awesome in my opinion. I will be rooting for him to win that world title this weekend because, quite frankly, Logan Paul is better than Jey Uso at basically everything. So, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, why in the world would I not want Logan Paul to win this match? I think I've been saying this for a while now that Logan should win a world title at some point within the next year or two. So, hopefully this is the opportunity. Obviously, Jay's going to retain, but it would be cool if Logan somehow pulled out the W. Anyways, then Gunther comes out, and Gunther says the same boring old shtick that he says every week. The bell eventually will ring. The ring to the hall, who barely beat Pat McAfee. The ring to the hall that got tapped out by Jey Uso in 5 seconds. The ring to the hall that is one of the worst world title reigns ever. That's the ring to the hall that's talking in the ring. And he's like, man, I can learn a lot from you, Logan Paul. I can learn a lot from your social media excellence, your entrepreneurship. And I'm like, dude, shut up, man. This reminded me of a Cody Rhodes promo. Say your entrepreneurship, your respect, your game planning, your coding, your love, your care for this industry. I respect you. I love you. No, let me stop. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But still, the point is that Gunther says all this nonsense and then says eventually he will fight him if he beats Jay and he will take the world title from Logan Paul because he sees nothing in Logan Paul. Even though Logan Paul is realistically he's better than Gunther at everything, just like he is Jey Uso, and that's just the facts. You can say what you want, but Logan Paul's match catalog in the last 2 or 3 years is probably better than both Jey Uso and Gunther's combined. So there you have that. Then this ends with Jey Uso hitting a super kick on Logan Paul, and Logan Paul's basically knocked out in the ring, and that's pretty much that. Obviously, we got Jay and Logan at Saturday Night Main Event this weekend, and we'll see what happens in that match. Then we get to a next match, which was basically the Judgment Day, Finn Balor and JD McDonald's going up against Penta and AJ Styles. I will say this was a pretty good match. There was a lot of fun spots. It was entertaining. There was a lot of chaos. El Grande Americano showing up. Penta was doing Penta drivers outside, right outside the apron. It was really, really cool stuff with that. And this was semi-entertaining. This is a solid match to start the show off. Obviously, I don't care about the Judgment Day, and like I said last week, if the Judgment Day does anything meaningless or monotonous or repetitive, I'm not covering it. So, of course, the Judgment Day won using interference from El Grande Americano, and Finn Balor actually got the pin. Instead of Finn Balor getting pinned, he actually pinned Penta. So there you have that. This match furthered absolutely nothing. Therefore, nobody cares about it, and therefore, we can move on. Now, we got Jey Uso in a backstage segment. This is a series of backstage segments that involve Seth Rollins and Jey Uso basically throughout the whole night. Seth Rollins basically goes backstage and talks to Logan Paul and talks to Gunther, and he basically talks about how Jey stuck his nose in their business, which obviously Jey Uso never did that. Paul Heyman was the one who came out there to confront Jey Uso first, but we'll just act like that didn't happen. Then he basically says, Seth Rollins basically starts complaining to Gunther. He's like, you know what? I thought I had respect for you because everything's about respect and mutual love and care and honesty and loyalty, and I need you. I love you. You know what I'm saying? All that stupid stuff. But at the end of the day, Seth Rollins basically complains about how, no matter who wins between Logan and Jay, he's going to fight Logan. And no matter who wins between Gunther and Logan or Jay, he's going to beat them for the world title. I'm like, Seth Rollins doing all this for a world championship that he literally just had a year ago, and then he lost it, and now he's coming back to say he's going to take my title. I never lost, yeah. Take my title. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even know what the heck is even happening at this point, Just a bunch of nonsense is taking place for the World Heavyweight Championship that obviously means absolutely nothing. But one thing that we have to discuss here with this Seth Rollins situation is obviously everyone's going to be talking about, oh my gosh, who's the third man going to be? Who's the third man going to be? Nobody cares. This faction is stupid and everyone knows it already. So nobody cares about this, man? So what? Seth Rollins just had the world title. He was the first ever world champion in this current modern era, and now he's going to get the title back eventually? What is the point of this? Why would anybody want to see Seth Rollins with the world title again? Again! He just had it a year ago and he had it for dang near 300 days. Now he's going to get it again. Like, come on, man. The best case scenario for this is that Rollins wins it, and then after a month or two, Braun Breaker just turns against him and tries to take his title, and that's it. Then we get to the next segment, which was the next match, I should say, which was Becky Lynch versus Roxanne versus Natalya. This might be my favorite match of the night, just simply because, it was an entertaining match. Like, it wasn't that bad. Natalya was actually doing a lot of good stuff, considering I think she's around like 50 years old or something like that. So she's obviously a big-time veteran in the ring, and she did a solid job. Becky Lynch also did a decent job. Roxanne Perez and Natalya had some botches that were pretty inexcusable, quite frankly, and Becky Lynch was no-selling some moves, which, doesn't really make any sense, considering the fact that she was knocked out after one move and but then she'd get up again and just randomly just start putting people in manhandle slams, but it is what it is. Becky Lynch getting cheered, by the way, is just egregious at this point. She's supposed to be a heel, and the crowd is still doing the whoa. You know, it's just the booking of these heels and these faces is so bad that faces get booed and heels get cheered. You know, if you want a good diabolical heel, you can easily book that. We've seen it booked for decades, but for some odd reason now, every heel's getting cheered. You know, Rollins is supposed to be a quote-unquote heel, but when he comes out, it's whoa. When Braun Breaker comes out, it's woo, 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 woo. You know what I'm saying? Like, come on, man. You know, where are the legitimate heels and legitimate faces? That stuff just bothers me. But this match was decent, entertaining spots every now and then. Lyle Valkyria eventually got involved and took Becky Lynch out of the match, took her out of the fray, and pretty much Roxanne Perez scooped in and hit the pop rocks on Natalya and got the W, okay? Roxanne Perez, like I said, was a big fish in a little pond in NXT. Now she's a little fish in a big pond, and quite frankly, I do think that she is kind of a jobber, even though it's early. I think she will be a career mid-carder at best, probably, but still, if she can become just a good mid-card talent, that is a great career, and I would 100% welcome an addition like that to the weekly episodes of Raw or SmackDown, man. I think that's a great spot, and I think that she's doing a good job with what she's given so far, so I'll give her that. Well, not a good job with it. I'd say she's doing a decent job, you know, heavily overrated. I don't know anybody who's been more overrated than Roxanne Perez coming to the main roster since probably Tiffany Stratton, but at least Tiffany Stratton showed flashes of being great before that started happening. You know what I'm saying? So there you have that. Then we have Grayson Waller versus Sheamus. This is... This is one of the moments I was just laughing, because this match starts off with Grayson Waller doing some of the most fake looking, like little baby kicks ever. Like, these are the most baby, you know, kid kicks of all time. They look fake. They're botchy. He almost trips on himself because of how botchy they are, and he just makes him look like a dork. But to be fair, that's the character of Grayson Waller, and so he plays the character pretty well. And even though this was just stupid botches and it didn't look like good wrestling, it was at least funny to laugh at, so I can give it that. You know, it was laughably bad, as I mentioned earlier, okay? So Grayson Waller starts off the match like that, and then basically you get a couple of shenanigans the whole time with Austin Theory. The crowd was actually chanting for Theory the whole time, which I guess that shows you that maybe Theory should do more than just being an undercard jobber his whole career. You know, maybe you can hear that, Triple H. But anyways, after we get out of that, you know, Austin Theory basically inadvertently, you know, quote-unquote inadvertently, gets Grayson Waller to take the 10 beats of the Bowerin by stopping Grayson Waller before he tries to run away from the match. Sheamus then hits him with that, brings him in the ring, beats the crap out of him. I think he hit like, you know, one of his power slams or something, and then hit him with a bro kick after he hit the big knee, and that was pretty much that. Grayson Waller got jobbed out. The match was semi-enjoyable, semi-entertaining, and it was kind of funny to laugh at because of the shenanigans and because of the just ridiculousness of Grayson Waller acting like a dork. So there you have that. Next thing we had was Zoe Stark versus Rhea Ripley versus Kairi Sane, which obviously turned into Rhea Ripley versus Kairi Sane. This match had multiple really bad botches, but obviously we have to talk about Zoe Stark's injury, okay? I did see that she was so injured that she couldn't even walk off, so the doctors had to like carry her and just pick her up and carry her back, but it's really unfortunate to see this, man. She took like however many months off. I think she was dealing with some injury, or she just wasn't on the show, wasn't featured, and then she comes back, and in her first match back, she already kind of blew out her knee. Like, that's just rough, man. You don't want to see that for anybody, bro. So hopefully she has a speedy and successful recovery, like I said earlier, and that's pretty much that. It looked like she was trying to like break her fall, you know, from her big missile dropkick that she normally does, which if she's going from one side of the ring to the other, I know she's kind of hit that move in the past, but I don't know. I think she tried to break her fall, man. I'm not sure why she did that. I'm not sure if Kairi Sane was supposed to mess up, if she messed up the timing or something, but very weird. She tried to like break her fall with her knee or with her leg. Very risky to do that, obviously, and then it turned into a torn ACL or whatever the injury is. I'm assuming it's a torn ACL, but hopefully, you know, it's something not worse than that, you know, or even better than that, you know, in a sense of like, it's not as big of an injury, but yeah. It looked pretty bad. You know, then we got Rhea Ripley versus Kairi Sane, which eventually became the one-on-one. This was pretty botchy. Obviously, you know, they didn't rehearse for this to be a one-on-one, so they were kind of pulling stuff out on the fly, and they ended it like within like 5 to 10 minutes after the injury, and that was pretty much that. But there were so many unnecessary, just insane spots in this. Rhea Ripley did a drop kick that almost had Kairi Sane flipping over and landing directly on her head or her neck area, which was kind of dangerous. You also had a situation, you know what I'm saying, where Kairi Sane, like, I think she tried to hit some type of, it's some type of like splash or something, and she got flipped over, something like that. And then Rhea Ripley ultimately ended the match by hitting the Riptide, and she pinned her. So now the Women's Money in the Bank has Rhea, Alexa Bliss, and it has Roxanne Perez. I like what I'm seeing here because it looks like Charlotte's going to be added to the mix, and they'll likely add a couple other cool or interesting talents into it as well. It would be cool if Sol Ruca could get called up for just 1 week to compete in the Money in the Bank, man, just to make it more epic, because she's amazing in ladder matches, and, her moves at the Soul Snatcher off of a ladder would be just amazing. You know what I'm saying? It would be really good to add on Money in the Bank, but, you don't need to do that. Obviously, they're not going to do that, so it is what it is. But this match, I would say, was actually pretty mediocre, pretty bad, unintentionally, obviously, not to their fault of their own, just because of the injuries and the botches. Well, I mean, the botches are their fault, obviously, but the injury to Zoe Stark was just unfortunate, and ultimately, Rhea Ripley wins, and that's pretty much that. I'm surprised that Rhea Ripley wasn't on Twitter, you know what I'm saying, during this match, complaining about the fans hating her and always bashing her when she comes out, and the fans are literally popping for every single thing that she does. But, maybe she should get off Twitter and actually comment about what's happening in real life, but I guess that's not what's going to happen. Then we get a backstage segment. I know I did say last week that I'm going to be skipping these going forward, but something new actually happened with the Judgment Day, and that is that Roxanne Perez has officially joined the Judgment Day by Finn Balor letting her in, obviously, because he is the leader, okay? So that's pretty much that. Roxanne Perez being added to this is either going to go very good or very badly. There's no in between. She's either going to become stuck in the Judgment Day vortex, and eventually she will become an undercard jobber that's wrestling meaningless tag team matches, and she won't be able to fully get over because she's tied to all these other people. I don't know if I would have put her in a faction this early on in her run. I mean, she's only 3 weeks in. I don't know about this idea, but hey, they're doing it. We'll see what happens with this situation when Liv comes back, and Raquel already is showing that she does not want Roxanne in here. And then after that, you had, what was it called, man? I think it was Dominic Mysterio. Yeah, she gave Dominic Mysterio some chicken tenders, and that was pretty much the end of this segment, you know what I'm saying? Roxanne Perez is in the Judgment Day, and there you have that. Dominic Mysterio was kind of eyeing her up, too, you know what I'm saying? So maybe Dominic Mysterio is going to be scheming on that and cheating on Liv Morgan in storyline, of course. So that's basically what that seems like for now. Then we get to the main event, which was a waste of time. We don't even need to go over this match realistically. It turned into a brawl with Sami Zayn, CM Punk, and Braun Breaker and Seth Rollins, okay? The match was 20 minutes long, and it ended all that 20 minutes for a DQ finish when Seth Rollins hits Jay in the back of the head from out of nowhere, okay? Like I said earlier in the review, there's no need for this faction to be having matches. That's why this whole segment, this whole main event made no sense to me. Why would you have a main event when you know that this faction doesn't need matches? If the goal is to weaken and beat up Jey Uso and destroy Jey Uso and eventually take the belts, why do you even care if Jey Uso even has it now? He's going to have to fight Logan Paul anyway. He's going to have to fight Gunther anyways. So why does it matter whether he's hurt on Saturday or not? You're still going to have to fight the winner of the Gunther versus whoever match for the world title in a couple weeks. So having them go out here and do a full-on match, what would this have proved if Braun Breaker won? So there's just no reason of this happening, and I thought that was really poor booking, because it makes no sense, number one, and number two, it's a waste of time, and number three, right, it's going nowhere with this. They're going nowhere with this match. There's no reason for this to be here. It shouldn't be here, and it makes the storyline look irrelevant, and it makes it look dumb. At the end of the show, CM Punk comes out to an incredible pop, incredible reaction, and him and Sami Zayn basically brawl against Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker, you know what I'm saying? And they just keep brawling, and the show eventually fades to black, and that's it. But before that happens, though, Jey Uso gets knocked out by Logan Paul, gets punched in the mouth, and then Logan Paul stands there above Jey Uso, knocked out, and that's the end of the show. Basically, as per usual, nothing really happened on this show besides Roxanne joining the Judgment Day, and that's really it. Everything else, and you have the Money in the Bank matches starting to take shape as well for the women's division. But other than that, I mean, this was a pretty stereotypical, mediocre to below mid bad episode of Raw. Like I said, I don't think it's garbage because it's not the worst of the worst that I've ever seen, but this is a pretty bad episode. If we were getting this in the middle or in the beginning of last year, everyone would be calling this garbage because everything else we were getting around that time, the first half of last year, 2024, was usually pretty solid episodes of Raw and SmackDown. So this will be considered an outlier as a bad episode, right? So I'm just judging it by the standards of what it really is. It's a bad episode of Raw. Obviously it's better than last week's, which was like a 1 or a 2 out of 10, but a 4 out of 10 being better than a 2 out of 10 is like choosing between crap and trash. You know what I'm saying? It's the same stuff. So I give this episode like a 4 out of 10. You know what I'm saying? Maybe a 5 at best if I'm feeling really good about it, but it's more like a 4 out of 10. Pretty bad episode as per usual. A bunch of meaningless filler garbage and nonsense, and that's usually what you get on a Monday Night Raw or a SmackDown. So with that being said, we have another shorter review tonight, you know what I'm saying, because nothing's happening on the show. Anyways, you know what I'm saying, I thank you guys so much for watching. Have a phenomenal day. Peace out and one love.